Bonita's Kitchen and thank you for joining us. What I'm going to be making for you today is a traditional Newfoundland cod stew. And nothing says cod stew better than a freshly caught cod from the Atlantic Ocean that I have to start off this beautiful cod stew with. So I'm going to explain all the ingredients as we go, but let's get started. Okay, so what I'm going to start with first, and I have already got it in process, is I got my boiler on boiling with half a boiler of water. It's about 6 to 8 cups. You could use vegetable broth or you could use water. If you're using water, we got salt beef that's in ours, and salt beef is our local cured beef that I also got a recipe on Bonita's Kitchen for. If you don't want to use salt beef, you could use sea salt, and that's about a teaspoonful of that. So what I'm going to do first is cut up my salt pork, put my onions and salt pork in to fry, and then I'll go on with the ingredients. So this is a salted chunk of fat pork, and this is what we use to make our scrunchions with. And pretty much in any kind of a fish meal that's been cooked in Newfoundland and Labrador, it starts out with scrunchions because everybody likes to have those little fat pork scrunchions. So I'm going to cut them in cubes here, like this. Then I'm going to peel them off. This, I'll show you how that's done. If you don't have access to this, don't worry. You can just use oil and your onions cut up into small pieces. So I'm just going to cut this from this hard piece of rind. Okay, so that's that cut. So what I'm going to do now is just pop this over into the frying pan and we'll get it start frying. I'm going to also put a teaspoonful of butter. You can put butter or margarine in there, and we don't need oil because your fat pork is oil. Just going to put all of that fat pork in there and get it frying. So after this turns into nice scrunchions, I'm going to take it out and we'll fry our one onion that we got there chopped up. So we'll just let this start to fry there now, and a little tiny pinch of black pepper on there. Okay, so now that I got my hands washed and ready to go, our fat pork is turning into scrunchions. And I want to talk a little bit about the salt beef before I get into the cod. If you're using salt beef to have your cod stew, you would need to soak it overnight, drain it, put it into your boiler and get that boiling for at least an hour before you start adding in any of the other ingredients. If you're not using salt beef or salt pork, you would just use a teaspoonful of sea salt, and if you can't use sea salt for dietary reasons, just eliminate it altogether. And then now we're going to touch base on our freshly caught cod. So talking a little bit about the cod we're going to be using in our cod stew today. As you can see, it's got the skin still left on it. It's the full cod that was filleted, and our friends Bill and Winnie caught this for us yesterday so we could add this for our show today. So fresh cod, but if you don't have access to freshly caught cod, you could use salted cod in this and eliminate the salt beef and the salt. So what I'm going to do now is take this cod off the skin because I don't need the skin portion for the stew. And I want to thank Bill and Winnie for providing the feast for this delicious meal. So if you are working with a fresh cod like this and you got the skin on it, so you will cut it like this first and then get the knife in under the fish and then pull it along until you take the skin all the ways off the fish. As you can see, taking it off that way, and this will, because we don't need the skin portion. Now some people may cook, especially for stews, you could have the skin on, but I like it off, and that way anyone that you're serving it to, they don't have to be using their hands to eat their stew. So keep going like this until it's all off. And also, if you're working with, like if you, I mean, you can get this already done at your local butcher's. Because they'll cut it all for you and have it filleted. Check around, make sure there's any bones, because it's got to be boneless cod, and again it could be fresh cod or the salt cod, but today I'm making this cod stew with the fresh cod. So I'm going to continue to do this fillet, and then I'm going to show you what I'll do next. Winnie and Bill did an amazing job filleting these fish, because I haven't found any bone in it yet, so that's a good sign. So what I'm doing here now is cutting the cod into chunks, because we're making a stew. We don't want it into a soup. We want to see the cod in the stew, and just go like this and just cut it into chunks that way and this way, just to get a nice piece of that cod. My mouth is drooling here now just looking at this. This is so good. Okay, so I'm going to put the chunks of cod here now into a bowl and put to the side, because this is going to be the very last thing that's going to be added into our cod stew when we get going on it. So what I'm going to do next is wash up, of course. We're going to take those scrunchions out of the pan, take off some of the fat, the grease, the oil, and then add in the onions and get them frying a little bit to get a little bit of caramelization on it. So let's get going. So pretty much now that's what they look like. You can have them browner if you want to, but that's pretty good to me, because I really only want it just ardent and a little golden brown. So I'm going to take these out now. I'm going to drain off some of that oil, and then I'm going to add in my onions. I got a large onion here that I got cut up into chunks, and I'm going to put this right into the frying pan. I took off some of the oil from the fat pork and just left a little bit and a couple of the scrunchions still there. So this is just until it starts to caramelize and just get a little clear, and then I'll show you what we'll do with that next. So now that I got the onions put in there starting to fry, I'm going to put another little pinch of black pepper in with it. I'm not using any salt because the fat pork was salted, and I'm using salt beef in our boiler. So I'm eliminating salt altogether because we got more than enough. What I'm going to do now is touch base a little with the vegetables that we're going to be using into our cod stew. I'm also going to be adding in 1 teaspoonful of onion powder. If you don't like onions at all, because some people don't like it in their diet, you can just use onion powder and do it, add it in when you're cooking up your scrunchions, or just adding it into your vegetable pot when you're boiling your water. So what we're going to talk about now is the vegetables that we're using in our cod stew. Is turnip, carrot, parsnip. Parsnip is like optional if you want it. Celery, potato, and we're going to be cutting that up into little chunks. And I did that in advance and had it soaking overnight in some cold water. So the onions is coming along lovely. And again, like all I'm doing here now is just caramelizing it, getting all those flavors, and building flavors is what it's all about. And some people just like to put the onions directly in the pot, but I just like to have that little bit of caramelization first. So that's coming along nice. So now I've changed up my pot. I brought over my boiler with salt beef that's boiling in there, and put my onions over on my back burner. So what I got in here is a nice piece of salt pork. And again, you can get that on Bonita's Kitchen if you don't have access to it in your grocery store and you want to make it well in advance. And it's a process, but I'll let you go in and check that out. If you don't want to use salt beef, you could use sea salt, teaspoonful, and have vegetable broth in there or water, and about 6 to 8 cups. So I'm going to show you now. This is cooked enough for me to put the vegetables in. I'm going to drain off our vegetables and put them right into the pot and get them cooking. So pretty much what I'm going to do now is toss in all of the vegetables. I peeled it last night and let it soak overnight in cold water, and it just takes off any starch that's in the potatoes. I'm going to put the recipe there for how much you would need of each one when I post it, but depending on how much stew you're going to make, you might want more, but you can eyeball that and judge it. But anyway, the vegetables are in. We're going to let that boil for at least 20 minutes in there to get them nice and soft, and then we'll add in the fish. Okay, so after 20 minutes or so, your vegetables boiling in with your salt beef or in your broth, we are going to add now the onions and some of the scrunchions. This is coming along lovely, and just look at the pot just boiling there nice. I'm going to put in half of my scrunchions because I want to keep some of it for a garnish to go into the bowl as you serve it. And we're going to be putting the onions into this pot as well. Just pour them all in there. And this is caramelized onions that was fried in a little small bit of the fat pork scrunchions. And just stir that around lightly. So after you added in your onions, then put the cod, chunks of cod, on into it. Now this was 2 big fillets, but you could put as much cod in as you want, and if you don't have access to the fresh cod and you wanted to use your salt cod, well, you could do that, but just leave out the salt beef or salt pork. And this is what it looks like. Absolutely delicious. So we're going to let that boil there now for about another 10 minutes, and then I'll show you what we'll do next. Okay, now comes almost the final stages of making our cod stew, and I hope that I'm making you hungry up to this point because it smells amazing in here. We got 2 tablespoonfuls of flour. I'm going to put that into a half a cup of cold water, and then what I'm going to do, we're making a roux now to thicken up this stew just a little. Put the cover on a mason jar, or if you just want to do it in a bowl, and you're just going to shake it so there's no lumps into the flour, and we're going to put it into our pot. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so now I'm going to take my cover off, and what I'm going to do, I'm not going to put all of this into the stew. Do you see how it's coming along? You can see all the chunks of the cod and the vegetables. I'm just going to pour just a little tiny bit in, probably half of what I got here. Just going to make sure all the flour is equally in there. Just about half. And this will help thicken up your sauce a little. If you want it thicker, you can put it all in, but I just want it where it's just that nice consistency. And this is what it's going to look like. So pretty much after when you put in your roux into your stew, it's almost ready. You just let it gallop boil again for just a few minutes, and then after, if you want to, you can add in some green onion. I'm going to actually garnish it on top of the stew when I put it in my plate, but just to add in that extra flavor, and that's what it's all about, building the flavors and making it as tasty as you want it to be. So what I'm going to do here now is scoop up a nice helping into my bowl, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. It smells so good in here. I would love for you to be able to smell it. I often say I'd like to have a scratch and sniff on the camera there. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. Okay, so this is pretty much what you're looking at. Now I'm going to have a nice taste. I'm going to put some extra my scrunchions in there and a couple of more pieces of green onion, and this is what it looks like, and I always say it's as good as what it gets. I'll put a little tiny bit of black pepper in there because course I like lots of pepper in it. And I'm going to add a little bit of the cod, some of the turnip, the vegetables, add a little taste. Delicious. Years ago, this traditional Newfoundland cod stew was served quite often in families, and we add a piece of homemade bread with it because that's what makes you full. I just want to have a little taste because I got some on the side. Just put the butter on it and dipped into the sauce. That was a big deal in all of the homes years ago. That's nice. Well, I hope you found this episode of Bonita's Kitchen for Cod Stew helpful for you today. Like I was saying, it's a traditional Newfoundland meal and was eaten by many Newfoundlanders over the years and still to this day. And if you enjoyed this meal today for traditional Newfoundland cod stew and you'd like to see more recipes of traditional and non-traditional Newfoundland meals, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and up at the top right hand corner is the link, and it would prompt you to what you need to do. And each time we will send you a notification when we post a new video. You can also visit me on my Facebook page or send me a message on my website www.bonitaskitchen.com. So thank you for joining us once again for Bonita's Kitchen, from our kitchen to yours. You have a wonderful day.